Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by author and economic analyst here I am, John Sneisen, and we are going to talk about Brazil, so I'll get right to it, because of course we've seen a lot in the news about with the Rio Olympics. It's a complete disaster. It's an absolute, it's catastrophic watching what's going on with the Olympics there, from the networks trying to report on the Rio Olympics. NBC, lowest ratings in I think 12 years. Then we have the militarized police in the streets. There's been so-called bomb plots, and one guy was shot, I believe. We also have a big issue with just how people have been pushed out of slums, and we're going to focus more on what we see with the economic woes that Brazil is facing right now, because Brazil is dealing with a lot of economic woes. And we could see even earlier this year, there were protests in the streets. People are waving anarcho-capitalist flags demanding an end to government. I mean, it's getting to the point where they're on the brink of something really big, and it could go in the right direction and it could go in the wrong direction. But we are going to list some of the facts that we see with Brazil at this moment. So, John, can you start off by kind of going into what Brazil is up against right now?
Well, right now, Brazil is really struggling, of course. Again, it's one of those countries that they, because of low oil prices, again, you got Petrobras, which actually have been caught in this huge kerfuffle with, I know there's been Norwegian companies involved as well. Yeah. That have worked for Petrobras, and what happened is there's a huge corruption problem, like within Petrobras. There was a lot of people getting some really big problems there, including the one and only, which wasn't actually at the Olympics at all. The one and only Dilma Rousseff has been indicted as we're speaking, and she's been indicted over the allegations that she covered up federal budget gaps with the funds from the state-owned banks during an election year. So she actually just, as the banks have done a lot of times, they fiddle with their balance sheets in order to, look good, and they use what's called shadow banking, where they push money around to make it look good, and nobody saw exactly where the money came from. So
lots of manipulation.
Yeah, and it's like that all over the place, and it's a huge problem in Brazil. And Brazil is known for being a very corrupt state from the get-go. So they're not doing very well right now. Like, their GDP is plummeting. Their unemployment rate is rising. It's currently at the official number is 11.3%. We're looking at the inflation rate has actually jumped a little bit. It's up at 8.84%, which is quite high actually right now. 8.84%. That's if you just have an increase in salary of 2%. Well, now you lost 6% of your salary that year, which is very substantial actually. And then of course we're looking at food inflation. It's 12.81%, so it's actually even higher than regular inflation. And this is the government's numbers. So a lot of times what they've done when they look at these food inflation numbers, even they actually have what called deleted and inputted other cheaper food into the CPI, how they calculate it. So it actually looks like it's better, but then the steak that they used to use is now that would have been pushed the inflation up to maybe 20-30%.
Yeah.
So it's very manipulative what they do, and of course like their current budget deficit is 10.3% of GDP, which is very substantial. It's very high, and of course, as Dilma Rousseff was indicted for, to try to hide up those massive deficits that they've had. And talking about those numbers, Josh, there's especially the numbers looking at a nation wanting to get the World Cup or the now the Olympics.
Well, the distraction mechanism.
Yeah, it's a distraction mechanism. For the massive public issues that they have all across the Brazil, and what if I'm looking at the spending that they used just over the 2014 World Cup. And then the Rio Olympics, well, pre-Rio Olympics, so this is the pre-numbers before they actually finished it off and actually done the whole
all the
whole Olympics. So this is $9.7 trillion billion dollars that you're looking at right now. And it's a lot of money. And then of course the $15 billion that they spent 2 years ago to have the World Cup in Brazil. So now in total that's 0.7 billion dollars that, that's what the people of Brazil could have gotten in tax deductions and other things. And instead now they're going to have to raise taxes. They're going to have to destroy their economy. Because all these Olympics, like we're looking here in Canada too, where they actually pay still for I believe the Montreal Olympics it was back in the 50s. And other things, and also in Norway they pay for both the Oslo and the Lillehammer Olympics still, the debt that they accumulated.
And it seems like there's a pattern here because of course the Vancouver Olympics in 2010, I just came back from Vancouver and it's unbelievable watching how much they're building. They're just building skyscraper after skyscraper. The housing market's about to burst. The bubble's going to burst, and they keep trying to prop it up by manipulating their economy to make it look better than it is until the payment has to come down and they don't have the money to pay for these things and everything blows up. And Brazil, a lot of people, I think most people actually realize that Brazil is a massive country, huge population, huge infrastructure. And the fact that people in the streets were protesting all throughout last year, this year, over their economy being on the brink of disaster, and here they are doing exactly what causes people to stand up in the first place.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It just seems like they're not learning from their mistakes, or maybe that's a point, because they are looking towards people or groups like the IMF after all.
Oh yeah, of course. It's the good friends of IMF comes in and saves economies that are in deep despair, and then they come and fuck them in the ass. Sorry, no, I'm not going to say that word.
It's the internet. You can say whatever you want.
ass. They fuck them in the ass right after they given them the money and take all their assets. They steal and loot from these poor people, all these countries, and then of course the elite sits there and stole that money from their people when they took that money in the first place. So they're just known for this. IMF is just a predatory lender that just destroys countries all over the world. I'm going to talk about another huge thing that before of course when they were hosting the World Cup and also the Olympics now in 2016 in preparation. Brazil has evicted over 200,000 people. Eliminating poor neighborhoods, defunding public services, investing in militarized police force and surveillance states, using slave labor and prison labor to build outrageous stadiums, unlikely to be filled with more than once, and improving a famous old stadium that is the world's largest for 50 years. By removing over half of the capacity in the favor of luxury seats for the elite.
Because government always knows what's best. The government wants to take care of you, folks. Give up your money and give up your homes and give up your wealth and give up your ability to have free will because they got some Olympics, they got some sports going on.
Yeah. But then the problem again, is that the people you have. Meanwhile, it says there in the article, protests and graffiti carry the message: we want FIFA standard hospitals and schools. So they want the government again, that are screwing them over to give them something back.
And I want to make a quick point here, John, which is it's interesting that they put so much money into these facilities for the Olympics, yet historically, the Olympics actually hasn't done much for people's economy. They look towards tourism, and there are some cases where it was good, but for the most part, look up old Olympic venues. You'll see that almost every case, every year, the Olympic venues that they used, they went over budget, and then they just sat there and rotted. Look at China. You can find articles from all over the world showing old Olympic venues. They look like ghost towns. Just giant areas of space with big, cool-looking buildings that now have weeds growing out of the walls because they do not use these after the Olympics. They try to repurpose them, but in most cases they don't use them. So it's just a gigantic waste of money, even if there was some incentive for tourism.
And, who are they working with, these guys at the IOC, the International Olympic Committee? It's the guys at the United Nations.
Absolutely.
We saw it very clearly, especially during the opening ceremony, and the Agenda 21 message, 2030 message was definitely there. And of course they used, the start of Agenda 21 in Rio de Janeiro in the 80s. They, of course, used that to their fullest intent to say, they showed how all these cities were going to flood all around the world and how terrible, it is. Well, it was supposed to do that. They showed them also for, I think, what was it Mr. Al Gore said? We'd be living under 7 feet of water or something right now.
Global cooling, let's get some money. Oh, wait, it's warming? Okay, global warming, let's get some money. Oh, wait, it's cooling again? Let's just call it climate change.
Yeah, exactly. Climate change is all the time, right, guys? So it's just, I don't know what to say. It's just... complete utter disarray when it comes to Brazil,
and the symbolism is right in the hoops themselves. I mean, the Olympic hoops are its own symbolism, and they are using this as a propaganda platform, just like they have been using the NFL for a propaganda platform for certain political ideals for quite a while. And it's unfortunate because this is just basically a continuation of what we see in the mainstream media. And people complain about the mainstream media, but then they're like, oh, but the Olympics, I gotta catch that. And I enjoy certain sports as much as the next guy, but when they're using your entertainment to propagate you and push you into line, as they're stealing your money and they're plundering your free will, when are you going to stand up, people?
And you know what's funny too? They were talking so greatly. I was watching this. Sorry, Brazil, but I'm gonna also mention a poor, disarray country like South Sudan. They were talking. They actually had, I think it was 3 Olympians that are coming in there. But they were saying how fantastic and great these people are. Meanwhile, in South Sudan, 309% inflation. The whole government is falling apart. There's a civil war there. Oh, nobody's talking about that, like it's so wonderful to have a new country that's going to come in and have their own sovereignty. Well, first of all, these countries that, people fight for in this Olympics. I think the Olympics are where, the Colosseums were in the old days. It's just built,
appease the masses while we do crazy things.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of what do you call it? The breads and circuses. That's
Absolutely.
What it is. All this Olympics,
and it turns into bread lines. And I don't know about circuses, but definitely lots of bread lines. And it's all just like money, 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 money.
Yeah.
This isn't even money; it's currency. They're printing it out of thin air, creating debt and devaluation, which leads to inflation and higher taxation. And it just goes around in circles, folks. And it's not going to stop because this is happening in almost every country. And nearby in Suriname, of course, they're seeing horrible inflation. And this is your free will, people. When you go to work, you don't want to be spending 60% of your money on government infrastructure, which is all junk anyway.
Yeah. Well, just wait and see. Like what happens usually in countries is that when they hit about 60 to 70% of their money actually going to food, there's nothing left to entertain yourself and have a good life. You just basically struggling, and that's what was one of the big fuels of the Arab Spring. And this is what happens all the time. It's the monetary system that lies behind all this madness that we're seeing right now in Brazil. And of course, they are a big country when it comes to commodities as well. Another big commodity country from here, and I look at their current import-exports. They both have plummeted, so it shows that there's very low exports going out to other countries, because other countries in the world too are really struggling, including Canada and the big ones as well. And their imports as well are struggling because people are really struggling in Brazil. And just to mention one stat, and this is just staggering. This is the murder country in the world, I would say, because they had, out of the 50 top murder capitals in the world, they had 21 places. 21 places, and the worst one is number 4, and it's João Pessoa in Brazil, and it has 79.41 homicides per 100,000 residents. And of course, you see, because of the poor people and everything, what they've done, as they were doing in the United States now, they're really ramping it up. You can see, like, looking at, and Josh is going to show you some pictures of the police forces from Brazil, how militarized they become. they're getting like this all over the world, and it's just a huge trend that we're seeing everywhere.
And people were warning about it in the 90s, and they were called crazy. And look, this is another example of one-issue people. Now, economics explains so much of what we have when it comes to our civil liberties, when it comes to our infrastructure, when it comes to the military, when it comes to everything that you can imagine within a country, from government regulatory issues to government implementations of different sorts of benefits. And if you understand economics, you start to understand why all the things that happen. So, as you were kind of mentioning before, like, if you were to, for example, be in Canada and everything's coming down, collapsing around you, and you're going, but legalize marijuana. Well, yeah, you shouldn't prohibit any voluntary rights of the individual, but how good is it going to be when you're just focusing on that one thing and you're sitting in a concentration camp smoking a joint? Is that fun? I don't think so. You got to be focusing on...
You're painting such a pale picture of the world.
Well, it's true.
It's getting true, though.
We have to wake up. This is absolutely a socialist hellhole we're looking at here, and this is a global order that's being created, a global monetary union. And when you look at Brazil, it's going in the same direction of Venezuela, and people were talking about it being a socialist utopia for so long in Venezuela, and now they're proven wrong, and they're like, oh, well, what about and then they're losing it because they don't know what to say. Because the fact is, socialism is always going to go in this direction, and then it begets communism right after. So that's why we as free individuals, we're born free. We got to turn down the government and say, you can't plunder me. You can't plunder my free will. I'm a free human being, and I'm going to speak for myself, and you're not going to destroy myself and my children's futures by implementing these over-regulatory controls where at the same time they're taking control of the monetary union, and they're trying to use these like shiny things, dangle them above our heads so that we just go, oh wow, okay, they know what's best for me. But they don't know what's best for you. You know what's best for you. The government has no idea, and they're making a Hegelian where it's just going to go in circles and make you have to keep trying to say, well, maybe they'll fix it this time. Well, no, they're not going to fix it this time. They're just running in circles, and you are the pawn. You are being used. You are being sacrificed, and you need to stand up because it's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's his responsibility. Exactly. We're just messengers. Spread the information. Sorry, go ahead, John.
I'm just going to finish off here with, of course, there's 340 companies that are been blacklisted by the government in Brazil for actually using employment methods that's pretty close to slave labor. I want to say one thing. What you see here is not capitalism. It's called corporate. It's a socialist corporate system.
Corporate fascism.
Yeah, it's social. It's either corporate. It's either socialism for the rich or for the poor.
Yeah, and fascism and communism and socialism all come around in a full circle, and we're trying to be outside of that spectrum.
Guys.
We don't want to be in that circle. Why would we want to be going around in a circle like a
think
chicken
outside
with its
of the
head cut
circle?
off?
Be in the voluntary state.
Absolutely. Be in the voluntary state, and by that I mean you yourself as your own state, and be able to decide your own decisions in life and not be plundered, because they are causing this problem. And as you mentioned, there are all these this slave labor that's going on, which comes from a government that talks about, well, we need equality for everyone. Forced equality, not like voluntary equality, not out of responsibility, but forced equality. Yeah. But on the side, we're totally hypocritical because we don't actually care about you. We actually just want to be able to use you and plunder you. Oh, and here's a few cents to some slave laborer who, had to grow up in some slum because we managed the economy into the ground and destroyed any opportunity that this man or woman might have had. So this is a great example of how socialism is hypocritical. Socialism destroys the individual, and we shouldn't be thinking in collectives unless it's through unity of the individual, where we come together and help each other. But by force, we're creating the problems that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, this is our message to the Brazilian people. Start to become independent of your government. Grow your own food. Have gold, silver, other things you can trade in between each other, other than the fake paper money that the Brazilian government is printing for you. Get out of the system. Don't let the system strangle you, because that's what it's going to do. It's going to strangle you until you're laying there with your last breaths, and it's just going to keep on, tightening the grip as you are dying. Get out of it.
Absolutely. Get out of it. And of course, when the globalist system is trying to plunder you, you need to plunder the globalist system. The globalist system is largely behind this. It's a worldwide issue. The globalists are trying to encroach on your free will. And what you need to do is you need to get yourself out of that system. I see a lot of people out there in Brazil that are doing great things. They're going out in the streets. They're waving the yellow and black ANCAP flag, the voluntarist flag. And it's one of the first times in history that something like this, a revolution, can actually be going in this direction. And I say that there's so much opportunity for you, good people. Just don't give up. Don't fall into this idea that it's all capitalism, because capitalism doesn't exist. Capitalism is the freedom of the individual to exchange goods and services for another, back and forth. No one is being restricted. No one's being coerced. But the people are being coerced because obviously the system that so many people want to save them is the thing that's causing the problems. I mean, how is that going for you over there? Obviously not good. So maybe it's time to divide yourself from that into a unity of the individual, where people can stand side by side and demand an end to this coercive state that's using them and using their free will and plundering it, so that the state can get above them and be able to keep rising up. Because in the end, you good people are standing at the bottom holding up that floor, and there's a lot of weight. The government's big, so it's a lot of weight to try and hold up, and eventually you're not going to be able to hold it up anymore, and you're going to be crushed underneath it. And that's why you need to shove that platform over. Get that government, throw them into the ditch, throw them into the gutter, because they are using you and they do not care about you. But of course, you got to care about your family, so do it for them if you're not going to do it for yourself.
It's time to win the Freedom Olympics, guys.
The Freedom Olympics. That's absolutely right. We gotta win the Freedom Olympics, and of course we all enjoy sports. You know, it's fun to watch, and that's not even the main issue here. It's the fact that the way they're spending, the way they're using the spectacle to distract you from what's really happening. It's very dangerous, and it's going to destroy so many lives, and it already is, as we've seen with the people getting pushed out of the slums. And then people are talking also about what's going on with Russia and how they've been kicked out of this year's Olympics because of the doping scandal and all that kind of stuff. Still, distraction, division, distraction. You as an individual need to stand up. I beg you guys, because you have an opportunity there in Brazil. The Brazilians have such an incredible opportunity. They could be the biggest country to ever demand an end to the state and demand free will for the individual and stand up. I see those ANCAP flags waving, so keep waving those, and deny all force, deny all coercion, deny all monetary central planning, and stand up for yourself, because you have a huge opportunity from what you are able to get out of the ground, your commodities, what you're able to get rich off of as individuals. But that's not happening because the government is using all those tactics against you and not giving you what you deserve. And the government's job isn't to restrict free will. It's supposed to be to guard it. But apparently they're not guarding it. They're destroying it. So, as I said, stand up, demand an end to this coercion, and you will succeed, and your children will succeed, and your grandchildren will succeed. But you have to stand up for yourself. Freedom cannot be taken lightly. You're born with it. The government takes it away. Time to take it back. Thank you very much, John. We will be back at you with much more coming up soon. Check the links below. Donate at GoFundMe, at Patreon. We can't do it without you. We do not make money at this. So we'll see you next time. This is Josh Sigurdson, John Sneisen, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.